Okay. Welcome to Satsang. Okay. Did you ever hear the statement, it's hiding in an obvious place. Hiding
in plain sight?
In plain sight. Thank you. Okay, did you ever hear that saying, hiding in plain sight? Okay, well that's what we're going to cover today. Okay? How we do not see what is obvious. Because if we see what is obvious, we really begin to live in great joy and great energy. But why don't we see it? Why isn't it so obvious? Let me give you an example more about this happening in plain sight. There's a story about a young man, a Mexican, and he usually goes from Mexico to the States carrying a big bag on his bicycle, you know, a big sack. And of course they stop him at the
border.
There, at the
Border?
At the border. Hey, I'm losing words here today. I guess I'm missing Jen because she told me she's going to be here early and doing this. Anyway, so he goes through the border carrying this sack. Okay, so they stop him and they examine it because there's a lot of smuggling that goes on between Mexico and the United States. And they found that all he has is just sand. So he comes in again and again and again, 3 or 4 times a week, over and over, and they're puzzled. What is going on? So one day, one of the inspectors at the border was having a drink, and he quit his job as an inspector at the border. And he sees this Mexican, and he goes over to the Mexican and he says, there's something funny going on. Tell me the truth, because I'm no longer working here, so I'm not going to report you. He said, what are you smuggling? And the Mexican said, bicycles. He was riding on a bicycle, but they didn't, but they checked the bags, never thinking that he is smuggling bicycles. Okay, well, this is the point of today, is that we miss the obviousness of the truth that we are. And this is the reason. Did you know that the suicide rate has increased by about 20%? That's quite shocking. And many cases of stress. In the United States it's been said that only 25%, according to a study made by the National Health, United States National Health, is that only about 25% are normal emotionally. In other words, most people are suffering from stress. But what is stress, you see? It is really self-concern. Not knowing who you really are, the truth of you. So who are you, you see? Now many people write me, for those, you know, since you don't know this, I answer emails anywhere between 50 to 100 a day. And I'm very dedicated to this, and I've seen the changes that have gone through, and most of my work is done Skyping throughout the world, you know. And yeah, the point. Yeah, and most people write me and they say, my life is not working out, there is something happening in my life, I'm having this stress going on, etc., etc. But it is something to realize there is no such thing as my life. There's only life. Because the one fact, the one truth in the universe is that there's only oneness. That is a fact that all physicists now know as the unified field. Another thing too, that we miss the opposite, what is obvious, is because our linear brain thinks in terms of time consciousness in order to survive in a world made up by the mind. For example, how many times do we think that now is a time. But here, now, this is it. There is no exit to now. There is no exit to this moment. Now you might think, what about the past? What about the future? Did you know that the past is completely gone? It has nothing. Nothing can happen outside of now. Did you know that now has no exit? And did you know that tomorrow doesn't exist except as a concept? Because there is no exit to this moment. You feel it out. So what causes time? What creates the idea of time? The earth rotating around the sun. It is that movement that creates the concept of time. So, so now we are asking ourselves, why don't we see this? Because if you see that this moment, for example, what we call the past, all regrets, all shame, all guilt are in the past. How often we blame our parents. I played hypnotherapist for 30 years until I had my awakening in the year 2000. And it changed into supersentience. Supersentience is looking at what is, just as it is. And it can really change people, and it has. And it changes them in an extremely positive, beautiful way, because they get to know who they really are. And then when we go to the future, we find all anxiety, all stress is in the future. But in this moment itself, there is nothing. There is not even a person. There is now. Now many people say, yes, I'm living in the now. More and more I'm living in the now. I read the book of Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, and now I'm living more in the now. What is wrong with that picture?
The eye.
That's right. There is no living in the now. There's only now. You think there is you living in the now.
It's no more of it either.
What's that?
It's no more of it either.
Yeah. The now itself is everything that reveals the best in us, the best that is possible. Now the question arises is, if the now is so perfect and it is so simple to live now, because now is all there is, this is it. If I am being shy, if I am being afraid, then I'm associating myself with the past, my conditioning. You see? If I'm stressed about what I'd like to be in the future, then of course, again, I'm not being myself. But when you are totally here, did you know that you are perfect? That you are at your very, very best? Because at this moment, when you are here, there is no person. There is only what is. So the key factor is, how can we deal with this idea of who we think we are? Because remember, every idea that you have of yourself creates stress automatically. For example, many people call me and they say they have stomach problems, or they have constipation, and they have this. Most of the time it is psychosomatic. For example, if a person were to be so tense, they hold everything inside. What happens? They become constipated, right? If you happen to be very stressed, okay, you can suffer a lot of fatigue, a lot of tiredness. So in other words, it affects the whole of you. But if you were to live without any idea of who you just are. Are you understanding me when I say you just are? Okay? Then there comes that freedom of expression, that freedom of being, you see, and there is no stress. Assaggiola, the founder of psychosynthesis, a bright, brilliant man, Italian man, he said the following. He said 95% of everyone, of all the energy that we spend it in protecting, defending, and maintaining our self-image. And there is no such thing, because it's all imagination. So this is what is called a person, you see. We're spending all our energy doing that. Now, the key question here is, what can we do in order to begin to live now as who we really are? Because the question is, if somebody says, my life doesn't work, this is, this is not happening, I'm not doing well. This is the question, is who is it that lives? You see? And you find that which is living is now, this moment, as you. You are a human being, a being playing the human role. So the question I'd like to discuss now is, why does it happen this way? What is it that is keeping us back from being the best that we can be? And it is very simple to be who you are. What is holding us back? Well, I'd like to tell you something about myself here, because this is very relevant at this point. When I was in Toronto, I worked as a physiotherapist, and I had a vision of Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi. And when I had that vision, I thought I was hallucinating because I was studying psychology at the time. But after 6 months, I saw his picture in the cover of a book. And I was so gone, I was so taken by it, that I thought I was special. I'm being guided by a great being, which of course it is a great being. And from then on, I quit my job as a physiotherapist, and all I wanted to do was meditate and sit still and blah, blah, blah. But I was thinking of myself as somebody has achieved something special. And because of that, of course, I wanted to do something about it. So the law of creation made me end up having interviews at CBC, Food for Thought at that time. I had a TV series, very small, with CFTO TV. I also wrote a book called Be Aware, Be Free, and it sold well. But 27 years of that, I ended up in Vancouver. And I had a relationship in Vancouver, and I don't want to go into details because I will lose the point here. And so the relationship didn't work. Okay, she left everything behind to be with me. And after a few months, it was so conflicted that I came to the point where I didn't know what to do. Damned if I do and damned if I don't, catch 22, between a rock and a hard place type of thing. So I went in the washroom, I actually cried, and I said, please, Bhagavan, help me. God, help me. And at that point, when I felt helpless, and I kid you not, this is the truth, everything that I thought I knew fell away. Everything that I had read meant nothing. All the psychology and philosophy and books I studied didn't mean anything. Because the answer was, there was no Burt at that moment. There was no Burt at all. There was just this beautiful feeling of love, this beautiful feeling of isness, being. And at that point, it was very clear, there's nothing to know but now, because now is eternal. Now knows no end, it knows no beginning and no end. But because we think we are just a body, and the body is recycling all the time anyway, if you happen to be 40 years old, you already recycled 4 times. You've been a baby, you've been a child, you've been a teenager, and now a man or a woman, right? All different. Personality, ideas, hopes, wishes, body, cells, everything's changed. But who is it that lives? You see, that is the point. That which lives knows no beginning or end, knows no change at all. This is who we are. But we cannot know that until we come to the point of total and absolute not frustration, helplessness. Yeah.
Or no hope.
No hope. You lose all hope. You become totally and absolutely helpless. There's no way to go, nothing to fix, nothing to do. If at that point you let go and say, I do nothing because there's nothing I can do, there's a shift and something happens. And one thing that I realized is that I am a human being, a being playing the human role of Burt. And since then, I called it super sentience, and it was wonderful because it was able to bring greater realizations and understanding. So the helplessness, because as a person you think you're in control, you think you have so many choices, you think you're changing things, but when you look back into your life, you'll find that you have been living a script. You see, really. And it's, you thought you made up your mind, but all you did was simply the conditioning that made you do what you did. Your ideas, your beliefs, the way you've been brought up, your religion, your tradition, your past controlled you completely. So there's another thing that happened which is so beautiful and also goes with what I just told you about myself. And this is so wonderful. A month ago I had a woman, and she happens to be Enneagram 3. Are you familiar with Enneagrams? Okay, she's an Enneagram 3, which is an achiever personality, and an attainer. She wants to, you know, she's very good in business. She had a wonderful career, but anyway, some things have happened to her. She had death in the family, she had many losses, and for 1 year she went into a deep depression. So deep, in fact, that she was thinking of suicide. She went to see many counselors, and nothing helped her with her deep depression. So anyway, so finally she saw me on the videos, and she thought, well, I'll try Burt because he's talking about depression here. So he called me, and she's from Miami. Now the reason I'm mentioning her is because she gave me permission to use her, but I cannot tell you her name or more details. Okay? So so anyway, so this woman told me her depression. We talked on Skype, and I said to her, what is depression to you? And she started telling me her story, what has happened, things that went on in her life, her relationships, etc., etc. So after 10 minutes of that, I said to her, okay, now tell me a little bit more about how depression feels. And then she started telling me what she had seen in my video about depression, the books that she's read, booklets, psychology that she had glimpsed, what she thought depression was. Finally, after about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, half an hour of this, I said, now tell me, what is it that you feel when you are depressed? And I had to have her say it. Finally, she said to me, I feel helpless. And I said, wonderful. This, what I've been doing all this time with you, and I can see that you are getting restless here with me, you know, pushing you on, and I'm talking to her on Skype. And I said, but now, I said, you said a beautiful word. Now, if you can explore that word, something wonderful can happen. I said, you are helpless. I said, this means that you cannot fix it, you cannot overcome it, you cannot stop being depressed, there's nothing you can do. And then she stopped, she said, I do understand what you're saying. She's a very intelligent young woman. She said, I do understand what you're saying, but what can I do about it? And I said, you see, the conditioned mind has to do something about it. This is why, if a depressed person tries to get rid of their depression, it can drive them insane. Did you know that? Well, if you don't know that, you've learned something beautiful now. I said, there's nothing you can do. So she was a little frustrated. So I had her relax. I put her into an alpha state. Relax, relax, you know. She lied down, and so we did that for about 10 minutes, and it was fine after. So after I said, now we're not really finished. I said, I'm going to give you some homework. What I want you to do is get this feeling of helplessness, recall it, and feel it totally. Don't think about it. Just look at it. You see, as it is. Feel it as it is. Don't do anything. Anyway, to make a long story short, 2 days later she wrote me And that letter was amazing. And she said, Burt, she said, depression has gone. I have so much energy, I don't know what to do with it. She wrote me a letter again after, a couple of days after, and she wrote me a whole article how much she has changed. Now this is a woman who's never done real spiritual work. You know, what I do here to her didn't make any sense in the beginning. But here she is completely changed. Now yesterday she sent me an email. She sent me a nice donation. And in this email she said something very interesting. She said, Burt, I'm so driven now that I want to become a teacher. Do what you do. Hold classes and everything else. I said, that's wonderful. You know, and the way she wrote is that she's completely changed. In other words, she woke up. Okay? So why does it happen this way? That the moment we realize we are helpless, we try to control it, we fight it, we resist it, right? But what if you see that there's nothing you can do? Why does it bring such a shift? Why does it bring such a change? What do you feel? What do you think?
A relief.
A relief of what?
I'm trying to figure anything out.
So a relief of your conditioned mind, isn't it? That everything is okay as it is, that I am okay. That depression is nothing more than a state of mind accumulated through resistance of things happening that I don't want to happen. In other words, she was able to see in her helplessness, you see, that her ego, her persona had no power at all. That the power lay in being, not in the person, but in the being. You're a human being. In the being, and the being lied the force. So when I told her, do nothing, and she said, but what do nothing? I said, just be. But what is being? Being is love. And that's what she awakened. You probably all heard the story about Eckhart Tolle, right? Eckhart Tolle, incidentally, at the time when this happened, he was in Vancouver, not very far from here. Now here is a man who was so unhappy, so depressed, that he was thinking of suicide. And one day he reached a point where he said, I can't live with myself anymore. You see? And he was totally desperate. I can't live with myself. But he's quite an intelligent man. So he looked, I can't live with myself. And then his I and myself. So he saw himself is a fabrication of conditioning. But the I is the being. And it came clear to him at that moment, I can't live with myself. Well, the next day the birds were singing. He was in absolute joy. He didn't want to work or do anything. He sat on a bench, and it happened to be spring at the time, I believe. And he would sit on a bench with a big smile on his face, feeling immensely joyful. After a few years, he wrote a book called The Power of Now, and it became a bestseller. So what are we really saying here? Okay? What we're really saying is that your true nature is beautiful, it's perfect. But you don't own it in the sense that it is conditioned. See, when a child reaches about 2 or 3 years of age, he relates totally to the name being called Mary, John, whatever. And then he starts getting to know his body. You see, when he's called, and then he sees his parents, and then he begins to feel, if they tell him, you're a good boy, he puts that in the basket. If somebody says, that was naughty, you shouldn't have done that, then he puts it also in the basket. So now he's made up of this good stuff and the bad stuff, and he's weighing, judging everything that is happening. Before you know it, he's a sum total of everything he's being told, of everything he's being conditioned to believe. You see, and before you know it, there is a person who is acting from a total past, with expectations, with ideas, with beliefs. And the nature that you are, the energy that you are, is gone. It's not there. Who am I? Really? Now when you ask a person, who are you? Who is it that lives? They say me. Don't they? Where is the me? Can somebody tell me? Where is the me? If I say to you, who are you? You'll say, I am me. Where is the me? Really? Normally you refer to your body, right? But if you refer to your body, which body are we talking about? When you were a child, just born? When you were, 3 or 4 years old? When you were a teenager? When you were a little bit more mature? These are all different bodies that change completely. The cell, everything has changed. Even your beliefs, personality, everything has changed. So who are we talking about here? The me, you see? And the one thing that was steady with you and never changed throughout, from the time of birth to the present moment, the thing that never changed about you is that thing that lived you. And what is that thing that lives you? What is it that lives you? Jesse?
Awareness.
Awareness. Pure awareness.
Not an object.
It's
something.
not an object.
It's not
It's not time. It's not based on time. It knows no beginning or end. And it is not consciousness. Consciousness comes from awareness. Through awareness we begin to think. But when you think, you can be aware that you're thinking. So you're not the thoughts that you think. Because thoughts come and go. Awareness doesn't come and go. Awareness is. That's who you are. You see? Now awareness is pure unconditional love. Awareness does not judge. Awareness does not say this is wrong or right. You see? So when you begin to live from awareness, the persona will begin to kind of fall away. You're no longer shy. You're no longer self-conscious or afraid. You're no longer held back. You're no longer judgmental even, because everything is okay. You see? Now you're living from that which lives you. That is your true nature. Okay. Now, what I'd like to do, I was expecting a much larger group today. Mary and Mike and Jan and all the others. But anyway, this is good. And what I'd like to do is I'm going to ask you a few questions, and I'd like everybody to respond how you feel. Now, if you feel that you don't know what to say, that's wonderful, because it helps you to realize that you might have studied a lot, you might have learned a lot, but when it comes to yourself, you know so little. And that's the beginning of awakening, the awakening itself, because, wow, who I am, I know so little. And when you realize you know so little, that becomes the clarification. One question I'd like to ask you is, how does one shift from the idea of me into who you are, into pure awareness, into knowing that? What do you feel?
I just have to let things be, because as soon as I'm doing anything from the point of view of thinking, then it's gone back into time. So I can't do anything. I just let it be, like whatever's arising. Just okay. Now this is
That's
here.
beautiful.
No, this is here. No, this
Let
is
it
here.
be.
Yeah.
Let it be. Are you beginning to do that?
Yeah, just a continue drop, continue drop, continue drop. There's certain things that are like tendencies, like maybe craving for some pizza or whatever, and just like catch-22. If I don't eat it, then there's a guilt that comes up, and if I do eat it, then it's just like, oh, it's just like, but I just let myself eat the thing, and if I want to, whatever. So it's just funny. There's so much stuff that just keep dropping. It's like, then it's interesting. It's just like kind of like everything's kind of automatically happening in a way. It's just like,
Very good.
like right now, it's just like I can't be any different than what's coming out right now. It's just like
You can be other than what you are, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
How the energy is responding moment to moment, right? Mm-hmm. If you make it wrong, That's why we become dysfunctional, that's why we suffer.
Yeah.
You see? But if we let it be, everything is okay, isn't it? Everything is okay just as it is. It's so beautiful and it's so simple. You begin to move automatically into your innocence, into your natural state, which is who you really are. The one that lives you, the one that's living. You see? So, wonderful to let it be. You see? And that's how you begin to shift into the truth of you. Truth is that which, there's no judgment to it. The truth is that which is, that never changes. It's forever, it's always. Okay? What are some of the things that are always? Never change. They never change. What are some of the things that never change? Hmm? Now, this moment, awareness, love, they never change. Some people say, what about fear? What about fear?
It changes.
It changes. And what is fear?
Love misunderstood.
Love misunderstood. Excellent. That's right. So whenever we find ourselves in any fear or deep anxiety, a feeling of deep discomfort, anything, frustration, it's nothing more than the frustration of love itself. Okay? For example, somebody is angry. Okay? This is what I call supersentience, going into the very feeling of what it is. What is really happening when somebody is angry? They feel powerless inside. So they're trying to control the outside. How dare you talk to me like that? Why do you do that? You see? You want to control it because you're feeling out of control inside you. You're feeling powerless.
Or their image.
Is that?
Their image is being threatened, maybe?
The image is being threatened too, because we have ideas who we think we are. Beautiful. We have ideas of how we think we are. You see? So therefore we have expectations. All these come because of thinking you're just a person, other than being pure being. All that creates all these judgments. You see? Frustration. What is frustration? When you're frustrated, what is happening? Feel it. Feel out what is happening when you're frustrated.
You're not getting what you want.
You're not getting what you want. Now this is the important thing. How often you as a person have really gotten what you wanted? And when you did get what you want, were you totally satisfied with it? Never. Never. You see? See how we begin to understand that whenever the conditioned person emerges, it brings nothing but chaos in our life. And this is why Asagiola said that 95% of our energy is spent protecting, defending, and maintaining our self-image. And it's only an image. You see? Imagination. That's what the persona is. Imagination. But the one that's living is always living in the perfection of the moment, not living in time. Time consciousness is what creates all the maladjustments or dysfunctions of humanity. Time consciousness. Going back to the past, you know, when I was a hypnotherapist, and I did help a lot of people, you know, and it did a lot of good. We went to the past and we want to find out why people acted the way they did, and we went into childhood and all this, you know, and it was relevant to some people. Oh, so that's why I'm acting this way, because I wasn't loved as a child, and now I'm needing love and I'm seeking love all the time. No wonder. Okay, so they did understand, but they didn't wake up spiritually through it. what wakes you up spiritually is not going back to the past, which is gone, but looking at yourself as you are, when you are not happy, when you are frustrated, when you are restless, when you are feeling helpless, and you look at it and you say it's okay, and you allow it. And the shift starts to happen with that. It's so simple and so beautiful.